Hello, and welcome to episode 63 of the Casual Tryhard Podcast. I'm Brian.
And I'm James.
And again, we are doing this remotely through the powers of Discord and the internet.
Yeah, and we're old people, so it's tough.
It is. Apparently the order you turn the programs on matters.
For some reason, you'd think they'd just work.
Yeah, they don't. Someone's going to be like, here's what you're doing wrong. And I'm going to be like, I'm old.
Oh, I'm sure we're doing it all wrong, but that's all right.
So if you would like to tell us how wrong we're doing it, you can get at us at Casual Tripod on Twitter.
Yep, you can find us on Facebook at Casual Tryhard MTG. If you want to drop us an email, you can do that at show@casualtryhardmtg.com. I'd like to take a second here and remind you that we have a Patreon account up and running. The tiers are a little wonky, so bear with us while we figure that out, as well as figuring out our lives in this strange time. But you can join our Patreon at patreon.com/casualtryhardmtg. And we also have a TCG affiliate link. If there's anything you're looking to pick up, if you don't want to go out in public, you can do that at tcg.casualtryhardmtg.com. Just a little quick aside, speaking of, not going out in public and picking things up over the internet. So I'd like to take a second to remind everybody that if you enjoy spending time at your local game store, or think you might enjoy spending time at a local game store at some point ever, this period in time where everybody is social distancing, keeping away from everybody, that is incredibly hard on your LGS. Most games, sealed Magic product, whatever, has very tight margins. And when you factor in, cost of employees, cost of rent, blah, 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 a lot of stores have a hard time staying afloat in good times. So it's really important that you do keep that in mind and maybe head down there, pick up a board game if you can afford it. I know you had mentioned a couple days ago or whatever, you stepped into our game store and bought some store credit.
Yeah, I just
that's
gave
something you can do.
some money, so it's like, hey, here's money, I will spend it later. But you have it now to pay bills if you're in a situation where you can do that.
Yeah, it helps them out a lot. Even if you're not in a position to financially try and support your game store at this time, just stopping in and letting them know what it means to you to have, a store in your area means a lot also, especially when, an LGS owner is used to having 20 people in his store hanging out, having a good time, like at all times. And then all of a sudden the store is barren, desolate, not a person in sight. That can wreak a lot of havoc on somebody's mental state. So just keep that in mind. If you like hanging out at your local game store, make sure you let them know that. Try and support them if possible, because I have a feeling a lot of local game stores probably aren't going to survive this, especially if it stretches on, another month or two or however long.
And this kind of goes for, other businesses if you can. Like, we have a friend, Tom, who runs a barbershop. Yeah. And so I messaged him the other day. I was like, do you do gift cards, or can I buy some haircuts in advance just to give you some money now? And he's like, well, hopefully we can open back up on this date, but if not, I might take you up on it and have you come down and buy a couple haircuts. Yeah. Just as a way for all those small businesses that to just give them some money now to make up for the fact that they're not getting any money.
Right. Yeah, it's tough, man. The world's going to be in a rough spot for a while. So if you can, please support your neighbors, support your friends, anybody you normally do business with, especially the smaller companies. They're really going to be under the squeeze coming up.
Next up is show ideas.
Yeah. I kind of had an interesting idea. If anybody else thinks it's interesting, please let me know. Otherwise, I'm just going to scrap it, because if nobody wants to hear about it, I'm not going to waste a whole bunch of time on it. But I kind of like doing the finance quickie that we did for upcoming rotation, and we'll get back to that in a second. But I thought it might be a neat idea to take a snapshot of the market, maybe 10 or 15 cards every week or whatever, that might be decent specs for when the market turns around, like things that are criminally undervalued right now. I know I was putting some cards, sorting cards, putting cards in my online inventory over the weekend, and I saw that Collective Brutality from Mystery Boosters is $6.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that card wasn't $6 when it was in standard, and it hasn't been cheaper than that since then. It was like $20 a month ago. Yeah. So if anybody's interested in that kind of stuff, cards that maybe you can pick up on the cheap now, preferably through our TCG affiliate link.
Or your local game store.
Or your local game store. That you might want to get while they're cheap before they go back up, or, pick some copies up to speculate on. Let us know. I think that might be kind of cool. And if anybody else is interested, I'll put some time into it.
I mean, I might go buy 4 collective brutalities because I've needed a 4th one for a while. I have like 2 non-foils and a foil.
Yeah.
Like I need a few more.
Yeah, it's a good time to pick them up. Like mystery boosters in particular, like a lot of that stuff, obviously some of the staples that were reprinted in mystery boosters, obviously the price is going to go down because there was a reprint. And there's, I'm not going to lie, there's quite a bit of that product being opened. But some of those cards, I think, tanked artificially because of the timing of the release of mystery boosters. I think that like a whole bunch of product got opened that first weekend and drove the prices down. People tried to get off of some of the cards. And then because of, social distancing, nobody's playing Paper Magic anywhere. I think a lot of those cards got hit a lot harder than they normally would have.
Yeah.
And that's why you're seeing things like $6 collector brutalities.
So just as a similar anecdote, so Channel Fireball is doing their buy list thing, and they're giving extra store credit and like all these giveaways if you do a buy list. So I was like, I want to do a buy list. So I've been a little busy with the world. And so today I had some time that I could work on the buy list. And there were a bunch of cards that I thought for sure they'd be buying that they're not. Because
just not even interested in?
Yeah, Cavalier of Thorns was not on their buy list. Didn't want it.
Wow.
Cavalier of Gales, same thing. Foil Dream Trawler?
Yeah.
No, not even on Dream Trawler, not even on their site for the buy list.
Yeah.
So
when you sent me a message like earlier in the day, and I meant to get back to you, and I was a little tied up at work today. But how much of that do you think is that they're standard cards, and like with the exception of Dream Trawler, like they're going to rotate this fall, and maybe like we won't get to see any paper standard before rotation potentially?
I think that is a lot of it. Like I'm going to look to try to find a place to move these.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that a lot of it is that these cards are rotating, and so they're not going to have the highest value anyway. But the fact that they've canceled all the Magic Fests till May, and CFB's not even sending cards out right now.
Right.
If you put in an order, they're not going to fill it at least for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, it might just be that there's no market at all for these cards.
Yeah.
So, just pointing out that, like, the lack of Paper Magic is kind of really impacting prices on things right now.
Absolutely.
So,
and like one other thing that I want to talk about where we're talking about some, financy stuff is Alpha Investments, Rudy. He made a quick video. It was either late Saturday night or yesterday about sealed product. And he was talking about like sealed product from like the last 2 years. So like recent-ish stuff, and how like typically during a recession, like sets get underprinted. And then once the economy bounces back, like the stuff that was underprinted becomes valuable because it was underprinted. There's just not as much of it out there. So that kind of got me thinking about mystery boosters as a product. And I had liked them as a spec target for sitting on some sealed stuff anyway. But if they released right, when they did, and then we don't have Paper Magic for like, what do you think in after that, people, if the economy is not great, aren't going to have a whole bunch of disposable income, what have you? Like, what's that do to mystery boosters as a product? Like, is that something Wizards might, put the axe on early, where normally it would have been really successful, but because, people aren't buying it, people aren't playing Paper Magic, does that, shorten the lifespan of what would have ordinarily been a great product?
I mean, it could, but it seems like it was so successful, like at like the convention at Magic Fest, that it just seems like that is a thing that could just kind of like hang out for the foreseeable future. And I'm sure there's tons of convention booster packs that aren't getting opened. Like that's gonna when Magic Fest come back, they're gonna have 4 months or 2 months of convention booster packs that they're just not going to open. They're gonna have to get through. So maybe,
Yeah, I don't know that that's as big a deal though, because they were running out of convention booster packs. Like I had seen reports of judges, like when you sign up for your mystery booster draft at a Magic Fest, judges would open the packs there so that people weren't like sign and dropping because there weren't enough packs to go around. And like towards the end, before all this started, you couldn't get mystery boosters as prize packs anymore. They didn't have enough to go around. They were selling out at every event. So I don't know if you're going to get to the point where there's just a whole bunch of it sitting around. Like,
but I mean, if there's
sure
a month, if there's 2 months of no Magic Fest, right?
Yeah.
Like I'm assuming they allotted a certain number for each Magic Fest.
Yeah.
So even if they were going to be like, okay, we're going to be done with these in June, well, they're going to have 2 months of extra stock.
Yeah, that's true.
Work through. So, and so last week, Mystery Booster Retail Edition was $159 was the TCG price.
Yeah.
This week, $168.
Wow.
So they've gone up $9 to $10 since we last checked them.
For a sealed box.
For a sealed box of Mystery Boosters.
Yeah. Crazy.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just kind of thought that, that might be an interesting thing to think about. Like if you're planning on sitting on, a box or two of this, I think the mystery boosters in general have a higher value sealed than they would normally, because like a lot of the value in a box of mystery boosters is the experience, like the experience of drafting it. And, you can't uncrack a box, as they say. Like once you've opened it and drafted it, it's opened, it's been drafted. It's really hard to do that again. Yeah. And you certainly can't sell it that way. So I think that like these boxes, once they get out of print or out of circulation or whatever, are gonna, pick up steam pretty quickly. They're gonna get expensive. And I just wasn't sure how, the whole Corona thing would affect that. If sales are down, they've got to, figure out what products to cut. I think it's pretty easy to cut, a set that doesn't fit into normal formats. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And like it's already been released.
Yeah.
It's I don't know if they're willing to, say, oh, we're not going to release the fill in the blank set we've like talked about because of this, right? They might just cut back on other sets that are already in the market so that they can move those. Because, there's a warehouse somewhere that's full of, commander decks for Ikoria.
Yeah.
That they are going to put out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're not going to not release them.
Yeah, so if it comes to a point of we're going to do another print run of this thing, or we're going to hope people have money to buy this thing we've already printed, they might err on the side of we're just going to make sure people are going to spend the money on the thing we've already printed.
Yep, I agree.
So from the intersection of Corona and Magic to just a little Corona in our life update. So I have been recording lectures. I am 8 lectures deep. My students have gotten recorded. I have, after today, 9 more to do.
And that'll get you through the end of the semester?
That'll get me through the end of the semester. My recorded lectures usually go a little long, so I might not have enough content to make it to the end of the semester. We'll see. They'll get all the stuff, but it might be, a couple hour-long lectures eat up a lecture. And no one asks questions, so I just go. Kind
of like our show, right? It always ends up a little longer than we expect. It always ends up
longer than you expect, exactly.
Yeah.
So, there's right now, I'm at Coastal Carolina. They just sent out an email saying that all the Maymester classes should be online now. So they are not expecting to have in-person classes at least through May. And there's talk about not having summer classes in person.
Man, that's crazy. How do you do, because some of your courses require labs, right? Like, how do you do a lab online?
Poorly. So we had like 4 weeks of lab left when this all happened. So 2 labs are like kind of becoming worksheets where I'm like, well, here's some data and, figure out some conclusions and stuff based on the data. And then I think 1 lab we're going to get rid of. But for like a whole semester, I don't you wouldn't learn how to do anything.
Yeah, that seems bad for your students.
Yeah, like this is the end of Organic 2. And so here they're like kind of seeing some neat stuff, but like the actual physical techniques that they're doing are
They've already learned.
They've already learned, right?
Yeah.
But in Organic 1, they don't know what any of the glassware even is called, let alone what it does. And like I can teach them the names of things, and like, but like it's. I went to grad school with someone who said once you do it in a lab, you never forget it.
Mm-hmm.
Like talking about like a reaction, but it's the same with like actually like doing whatever the procedure is. I can tell you how to do an extraction, but until you've done it, right, you don't actually know it. It's like I can tell you like how to untap, upkeep, draw, but until you've done it enough times. And kind
you're going to forget what order you do it in.
Exactly. You're going to forget steps.
Yeah. Yep.
So, yeah, it's not good.
Yeah. Sounds not good.
You, unlike me, you're essential.
I am essential. I guess the NADA, the National Association of Automotive Dealers, or whatever it is, has petitioned the federal government to make my job life essential. So your automotive technician is now life essential. Somehow they convinced people that getting your oil changed is going to prevent this virus. Or something. I don't know. It doesn't make any sense. We've been kind of lucky. We've been pretty like business as usual up to this point. I mean, lucky and unlucky, depending on which way you want to look at it. As far as my paycheck goes, I've been pretty lucky because business has been as usual. Some of the things people are leaving their house for, though, man, like it seems like everybody's, doesn't have to go to work, has 2 weeks off, whatever, and they're bringing in like the most nitpicky jobs, like squeaks and rattles and, stuff that they normally wouldn't have made time for. Now they have all this free time and, let's go bug the dealership. So it's kind of crazy.
Yeah. The sad part is my dad just got laid off for 2 weeks, maybe longer. We will see. So that's no good, and that's happening to a lot of people. So,
a lot of people, yeah. You said your mom had a scare too, right?
Yeah, had someone come in sick to her job and then was trying to like wipe things down and like spray some Lysol, and her boss yelled at her because it smelled bad. And it's like everyone that comes into this bank is super old. Like, what?
Right?
No, you don't. If they die, they can't do business with you anymore.
Yeah, you can't be killing off your customers. That's for sure.
Yeah, so it's rough.
Yeah,
but we'll try to not revisit Corona time anymore, or at least not too much. This podcast, just so you have a break from it.
Yeah.
So
I'm sure sick of hearing about it.
I know, and I don't participate in that much news, but it's
I never used to.
You never used to.
Yeah.
You're like, what's going on? I will point out though that somewhere, Mr. Life Essential, liquor stores have also been deemed life essential.
Yeah, but see, like if you're working in a liquor store, like you're getting paid for working in your liquor store, right?
True.
Like if I show up to work and nobody decides to have their car worked on because they're in quarantine, I don't get paid for that.
That is super shady.
Yeah, so I'm essential, but not essential enough to pay me for being there.
Yeah.
What a time to be alive.
What a time to be alive. We can't do without you, but we can't compensate you.
Yeah. I'm a little nervous for what the next couple of weeks brings, but we'll see.
Yeah. Listener question time.
Yeah, we had this one. Oh, I don't remember where this one came in at. Was this an email? I think this was a email?
Maybe. I don't know. I didn't see it, so it wasn't on Facebook, I don't think. So
yeah, I think this was an email. Jason had a really good question that I figured we'd talk about on the show instead of me just shooting an email back to him. He said that when he's looking at deck lists online, he noticed that a lot of the deck lists have like one or two ofs in the sideboard. And he mentioned that for him in particular, when he builds a sideboard, it's almost always 3 or 4 ofs. And he wanted to know why so many sideboards had, random 1 or 2 ofs instead of, play sets of everything.
Yeah.
And he did mention that he knows like what a wishboard is, and these weren't wishboard decks. They were just normal decks that he's seeing, random 1 ofs and 2 ofs in the sideboard.
Yeah, I'm with Jason in that a lot of times when I sideboard, I'm like, I want to, like, I have specific matchups I want, and I'm like, I want as many of this card in this matchup as I can get. So we're going to put 4. So I usually am someone who shies away from the one of sideboards. I know why it's done, but I'm usually on the like, I want 3 of these because I want to draw it.
Yeah, I almost never have 4 of a card in the sideboard. If I'm building a deck and I'm putting 4 of a card in a sideboard, that means that card's really important to my game plan, even if it's only against like 1 or 2 decks. And at that point, I would think about moving some number of them to the main deck. A good example of this is back in Guilds of Ravnica Standard when like the Golgari Explore decks were really popular. A lot of those played 4 Duress in the sideboard. And what ended up happening was you wanted them like always in the mirror and always against like the Arclight decks. And if you're bringing 4 cards in 2 out of 6 matchups or whatever, like there's a real reason to bring at least 1 or 2 of them main deck. That way you can be, kind of pre-sideboarded for a third of your matches. And that's what ended up happening is, all these decks started off running 4 copies in the sideboard, and then like 1 or 2 of them kind of made their way to the main deck. Or something similar. Like it wouldn't have to be, a discard spell made its way to main deck. So
yeah. So sideboarding is something that takes a lot of practice.
Yes. It's also something that's really hard for like newer, less experienced players, or like people are just kind of venturing out into other formats. It's a really big hurdle for people to get over. And I think like realistically, it's one of the stepping stones to becoming like a real competitive player is to learn how to sideboard.
And it takes a lot of time, even when you're like experienced with it, to like make your sideboard plan, then use your sideboard plan enough that you see those cards in the matchups that you wanted to see them in, and then you see them, and then you saw them in the situation where you thought they'd be good, and then you got to cast the card and then evaluate if that card was in fact good or not. And so that takes a lot of reps to get like not only come up with your original numbers for your sideboard and the cards, but then to test and see like was this the right card for this situation in this matchup.
No, 100% agree. One of the things that I found that helped me a lot kind of cross this hurdle or jump over it or go to the next step or whatever was just playing other formats. Back when I, got back into the game like 5-6 years ago, whatever, like I was only playing standard and I was having a really hard time figuring out how to sideboard. A lot of times, like I'd have my sideboard there and I wouldn't even use it because I didn't know, like I knew what cards had to come in, but I really didn't understand like the premise of taking cards out of your deck. I guess my thought process was if they were good enough for me to, put in the main deck, like I don't want to take any of them out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So one thing that helped me kind of cross that bridge was playing other formats. The further back you go, the bigger card pool you get, the more power you kind of have to draw from, and the more important like every single slot in your 75 becomes. At the time we didn't have Pioneer, so the next like bigger format that I got into was Modern. And if you don't sideboard in Modern, you don't win. Like you have to sideboard in Modern.
Yes. And then you have to draw your sideboard cards.
Like just being forced. Yeah, you have to draw your sideboard also. But just like kind of being forced to sideboard like made me better at sideboarding.
Yeah. So on the question of like what comes out, a lot of times you're looking at, is this card, the cards that are objectively bad in the matchup just need to go away. So if you're playing Jund against Dredge, the spot removal spells are typically bad.
Yeah, I don't want to, fatal push any Dredger or Prized Amalgam or Bloodghast or whatever. Right. Yeah, I've wasted a card.
Right, so things like that where you're like, okay, this card is just objectively bad in this matchup. And then you want to take the cards that are kind of like your more general cards that might not be, that are like a 5 in every matchup and maybe an 8 in some matchups, and then sometimes a 2 in other matchups. Those cards, when they're a 2, are cards that you want to take out. Or when they're a 5 in this matchup, but then you have an 8 in your sideboard.
Right.
Like, those are the times where you're trying to like take out the cards that are like actively bad, and then like optimize to get more 7s and 8s in your deck as opposed
Like,
to 5s.
I'm going to reference Jund a lot, like throughout the rest of this episode. So please bear with me. But that's kind of the deck that I learned to sideboard with, and also a deck that relies really heavily on sideboarding. And it is a deck that runs a lot of like 1 and 2 ofs in the sideboard too. So it's kind of a good comparison. I can talk about the sideboard and tell you why things are a 1 and a 2 of. But going back to the Jund reference, a card that is normally a 5 occasionally is an 8 or a 9, and also occasionally is a 2, is Scavenging Ooze. Like, Scavenging Ooze in most matchups is good. Like, it's a good card.
Yeah.
Against things like Dredge or Snapcaster decks or things that, do anything out of the graveyard, Scavenging Ooze is an 8 or a 9. It's great. It eats the things, it gains you life, it gets bigger. But against a deck like Humans, the card's a 2. It's a bear. It's a 2-mana 2/2 that maybe gets to eat something. But if you can bring in like a Fulminator Mage to blow up one of their lands, because their Humans mana base is terrible. If you can bring in a Fulminator to blow up a land, like, that's almost a strict upgrade on your 2-mana 2/2. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So you're just trying to look at those cards that are and make them better. Right. Another thing we talked about for sideboarding back when we were getting ready for that Legacy event was like changing your game plan. Does your sideboard, are you a controlling deck game 1, and then you need to be more aggressive game 2 and 3? So you take out some of your controlling cards and you bring in cards that are going to make you more aggressive. So like looking at how you can change your game plan, but again, you are limited to 15 cards.
Right. And like the limit of 15 cards kind of leads in like to the next point that I wanted to make, and something that you alluded to was Jason said that when he builds a sideboard, it's almost always 3 or 4 ofs. And you said that when you build a sideboard, you like to use a lot of 3 or 4 ofs. And that's kind of the issue, is that if you have like we're going to talk about I know I'm talking about Jund and Modern, but we're going to change the gears to Standard here for a second. If you have like a normal Standard meta of like 6 decks, so it's like mono red, blue white, fires, adventures, Temur Rex, Sultai. There's like 6 decks. That's like a pretty standard, standard meta game. And you have, 3 or 4 cards like as different options in your deck. You don't have enough slots in your sideboard for that. So if you have a card that you want to bring in against fires, and a card that you want to bring in against, mono red, and a card that you want to bring in against blue white, like, that's almost your entire sideboard if you're running 4 ofs of everything.
Yeah.
You just don't have enough room to do it all if that's the way you're building your sideboard.
I think
so. One of the reasons. Go ahead.
Good. I think also that the type of deck you're playing really impacts it. Like if you're playing a cantrip heavy deck, or a deck that gets to see a lot of cards, playing 1 ofs and 2 ofs, you're going to have a greater chance of seeing them.
That's true. That's a really good point, actually.
So, like, if we go back, if you look at, like, Legacy Delver decks, their sideboards are almost all 1 ofs, because they're going to see so many cards because their deck's all cantrips and shuffle.
Yeah, I mean, they run 12 cantrips. They can see their entire deck every game.
Yeah, where if you're playing green-black depths, you're drawing 1 card a turn, and so you sometimes will have you want to have a higher density of those sideboard cards.
Yeah, just so you make sure that you find them.
Yeah, but this also goes back to having 1 ofs. If they overlap in what they do, it's important. So in Modern, or I guess even now Pioneer, there's Rest in Peace and Grafdigger's Cage.
Right.
You're going to bring in Rest in Peace against all the graveyard decks. So anything like Arclight Phoenix, right? But Cage is still good against Arclight Phoenix.
Right.
So you have 1 Rest in Peace, 1 Cage, but now that Cage is good against Collected Company decks, where Rest in Peace isn't doing
Court of Calling decks. Yep.
Yeah, so you can sometimes, you might have 1 ofs, but it might be because they overlap, and Rest in Peace against Dredge is like a KO,
Mm-hmm.
and Grafdigger's Cage, you can work around it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So
I mean, like with Cage, you can kind of play your normal game plan, and then, like, once you get to a point where you can take care of the cage, then you just explode
yeah,
because your graveyard is still there. Whereas with Rest in Peace, you don't have a graveyard to fall back
yeah.
on.
So maybe Cage is like, if Rest in Peace is the 100%, if
Mm-hmm.
Cage is 70 against Dredge, but
Mm-hmm.
it's, exactly what you want against uh, Collected Company is 100% against Collected Company,
Yeah,
right? Rest in Peace is 0 against Collected Company.
yeah, it
Doesn't
just
do
doesn't
anything.
do anything.
So you have two different cards, but they double up to be your graveyard hate.
Mm-hmm.
And then one
Yeah,
of them also gets to be your Court of Calling Collected Company hate.
yep. The same thing applies for different reasons with other cards, though. Like the next thing that I had in our show notes here was talking about like the current modern Jund sideboard. And like, I mean, even in the past, Jund has always ran some amount of land destruction in the sideboard. Right now, it's really important that you have like an answer to a Valakut, you have an answer to, whatever
Field of the
land you
Dead.
need, like Field of the Dead or a Tron land or whatever. So most current Jund lists are running like 4 copies of a land destruction spell, and the best land destruction spell is Pillage, because it kind of serves double duty. It serves as your artifact hate and it serves as your land hate. It can blow up one or the other. The problem, though, is that the double red mana is tough because Jund's mana base is so stretched. Like, you want black mana on turn 1 for a discard spell, and then you also want access to red green on turn 2 for Ren and 6. And then you want access to black black on turn 3 for Lily, but you're also asking for maybe red red on turn 3 for Pillage. Like, that puts a lot of demands on your mana base, and all it takes is one wrong fetch to mess up the whole first 3-4 turns of your deck. So what some people are doing in Jund is, instead of running 4 of Pillage, they're running a split between like 2 Stone Rain and 2 Pillage. The Pillage is still important because some of the decks that you want the land destruction against, you also want some artifact removal for. Like, if you blow up the Amulet out of the Titan decks, you can blow up like an O Stone or like a map or whatever, clean up a Worm Coil Engine out of Tron. Like, those things are nice to have your land destruction be used as either. So you don't want to just cut the Pillages completely. So what a lot of people are doing is running a split. They're running like 2 Stone Rains because it's so much easier on the mana, but then they're also running a couple Pillages because if your mana does work out, Pillage is just a better spell. So like, that's another reason why you might want to split cards around, not just for double duty, but also because the mana is not quite right.
And before, the sideboard card of choice in that slot was Fulminator Mage.
Oh
But
yeah, and the mana is even better for Fulminator Mage because it's hybrid red black.
yeah, but now that card's black and Veil of Summer is still around. So now
Yeah,
you can't afford to get your Stone Rain Veil of Summer.
Veil of Summered. Yeah.
So that's why now people aren't playing Fulminator Mage
Hmm.
because it gets Veil of Summer too easily, or at
Yeah,
all.
that's a feel bad.
So
I
like,
mean, honestly, that probably costs you a game if you get your
oh,
Fulminator veiled.
I'm sure it does. But like, that's another reason that sideboard slots will change, and maybe one of, because maybe there's a spot where like someone's like, I really want the 2/2 body from Fulminator Mage,
Hmm.
so I'll have a Fulminator Mage because I want to bring in one more 2/2
Hmm.
against, I don't know, mono red and blue white control. I just want a
Hmm.
body, but I
Yep.
also want a body that can blow up a land. So this is my answer. But I
Hmm.
can't have 4 of them because of Veil of Summer. So I'm going to do
Right.
some split where I get my body in some matchups and I get my land destruction in other matchups. So it's finding
Yeah.
those cards that are flexible.
Hmm.
Oftentimes allows them to be like a one of, because they're going to fill in multiple roles and multiple matchups.
Yeah, especially in the example you just used where it's blue white, like the artifact destruction on your pillage doesn't matter at all against them. and you would almost always rather just have a 2/2. Like I know traditionally I always brought in fulminators against blue-white.
Yeah, because you just wanted extra threats. You wanted to, at the
Yeah.
end of the game, draw a 2/2.
Mm-hmm.
Be like, you have to answer this stupid 2/2 now.
Yeah.
And then it just had incidental value where it got to eat a colonnade.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
But you would never bring in pillage. So it's like the meta game combined with like what extra roles that card can play.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I'd never bring in Stone Rain that matchup either, though. But like I said, I always brought in Fulminate. And like I kind of alluded to in the last section, sometimes just room in the sideboard is the issue. Again, I'm going to go back to building a Jund sideboard. If I put, 4 Stone Rains and 2 Ancient Grudges in my sideboard, that's 6 slots. And if some of that overlaps, like I said, I kind of want Artifact Destruction against the Titan decks and against Tron anyway. But I'm probably, I wouldn't bring in Ancient Grudges against the Amulet decks just because it doesn't do enough. Like, they can still Titan me, and then I'm stuck holding an Ancient Grudge that didn't really do a whole lot for me. But if that was stapled to another card, it gets much better. And it also condenses the number of slots I have to devote to a thing. Instead of having, like I said, 4 Stone Rains and then, 2 Ancient Grudges or whatever, I can have 2 Pillages and 2 Stone Rains, still cover everything that I want it to cover, but only use 4 slots instead of 6. Like, sometimes you need to double up the cards, kind of like you were talking about, where, the 2/2 body's relevant.
If you look at like the way they've printed a lot of modern cards recently, they've printed a lot of modal spells.
Yeah, like Night of Autumn's a great example.
Night of Autumn. I think the first big one recently was a Braid. Do you like deal 3 to a creature or destroy an artifact? Right? Yeah. So if you have in your sideboard 3 slots for destroy an artifact, you could have a Braid, Pillage, and Ancient Grudge. So you could have 3 damage, blow up an artifact, blow up a land, blow up an artifact, and really blow up an artifact. Right. As your 3, as opposed to just 3 cards that say blow up an artifact. Instead of 3 shatters, you have 3. You have 3 shatters plus.
Right. Because they all serve double duty.
Right, and also putting a 4 of in your sideboard, that means you have 4 cards that you want to take out of your deck for it.
Correct.
And maybe you only have 3 cards you want to take out. You're like, I want Shifting Ceratops against blue-white control, but there are only 3 cards I want to take out against blue-white control.
Right.
So I only have 3 Ceratopses to bring in. So it doesn't do you any good to have a 4th.
Right. And sometimes the exact opposite of that's true as well. Like if I'm going to fall back to Jund. If I'm running 2 Terminates, 4 Fatal Push, and 3 Lightning Bolts, none of that really does anything against blue-white. I definitely don't want the Terminates. I probably don't want the Fatal Pushes. I may or may not want the Bolts, but I probably don't want the Bolts. So that's 9 cards I want to take out against blue-white. Chances are I don't have 9 things that are good against blue-white in my sideboard. So I start having to look at things that are just okay against blue-white. And that's kind of when diversifying can help also. Like we said about the Fulminators, maybe I don't want the land destruction against them, but a 3-mana or Gray Ogre, a 3-mana 2/2 is better against them than a Terminate is. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So if you can diversify.
Or the same thing, if you're playing against mono red, having a Braid deal 3 damage to a creature, or playing against humans, dealing 3 damage to a creature, or maybe tagging a Vial, you're like, this is way better than just having Shatter, or way better than just having Incinerate in my sideboard, because it does so much more.
So diversification is another good reason to run, less than 4 copies of something. I mean, sometimes you just don't want 4 copies in general, right? A lot of times your mid-range decks, especially against the mirror and against control, want access to insert 6-mana planeswalker here, whether it's Garruk or Lily or whatever 6-mana planeswalker has existed. You want to bring that in because it's a hard threat for them to deal with. It gains value turn after turn. A lot of times they just run away with the game. It's a powerful tool to bring in against, either the mirror or a control deck. But you don't want 4 of them. Like, you don't want to look at your opening hand and see 2 of them in your opening hand because you put 4 in your deck. I mean, you just mulligan basically. So you want to draw it closer to when you're going to cast the spell, like on turn 6. So maybe you only want 2 copies or like 3 copies absolute tops. You really don't need all 4 of them.
Yeah, the more expensive a spell is, the less of it you need because you're going to have more time to draw to that spell.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're sideboarding in hand disruption, if you're sideboarding in duress, you probably want to be able to turn 1 a duress.
Yeah.
So you might want more of that effect because it costs 1 mana. And even if you draw 2, you can go like duress you, 2-drop, 2-drop duress you again.
Right.
Right. And so you can sneak in a 1 mana spell somewhere else on your curve. But if you're playing, a 5 or a 6 mana spell, you're not going to sneak.
You're probably not going to sneak that in. Yeah.
Right. And, you have more time to draw that 6 mana spell. So you don't have to see it in your first 10 cards. You need to see it in your first 13 or 14 or 15 cards. You get to see a quarter of your deck before you really want to cast it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and a lot of times by that point in the game, like, you've found a way to start digging a little bit too. Like in these kind of decks, in these decks that want access to that mid-range hammer, they typically have some sort of engine to start like rolling advantage through. And one way to do that is by, just getting raw cards off the top of your deck. So even if you're only running, 2 copies in your post board 60, once your engine starts rolling and you get access to more cards off the top of your deck, like, it's not super critical that it's in, even the top 15 cards. Maybe if it's in the top, 20 cards or 25 cards, like, maybe that's plenty. You know what I mean?
When you play those mid-range decks, right, you have a lot of time to find cards. If you're playing like aggressive decks, like say you're playing Boros Burn in Modern, you might be more apt to have 4-ofs in your sideboard because you're hoping to play 4 or 5 turns.
Right. Yeah, you only want to see the top 11 cards of your deck and have your opponent dead.
Yeah, so you're like, okay, I really, against, like, I used to play 3 or 4 Stony Silences against Affinity because it wasn't a great matchup, or I was just bad playing against it, one of the two. But I always wanted to see 1 Stony Silence. And the chance of seeing 1 goes way up if you play 3 or 4. But since you're seeing so few cards in your deck, the chances of you seeing a second one were significantly lower. Whereas if you're playing like Abzan, less cool Jund, you're going to play a 15-turn game and drawing your second Stony Silence when you needed it to be anything that actually had text really hurts you. So if you're playing a deck that's trying to condense the number of turns in the game, you might play more cards that do a similar thing, or more cards, more of the same card. But
they also need to be cheaper though too, because if you're only you're not going to bring in 4 Karns in that matchup. You know what I mean?
No, you're going to bring in things.
Karn does the same thing as Stony, but it costs 2 mana more.
Yeah, you're going to bring in Stony Silence. You're going to bring in Rest in Peace. You're going to bring in a bunch of things that cost like 2 mana that are going to swing the matchup that you wanted them to swing. So, let's say if Neobrand is actually like a deck, right? You're like, okay, I'm on the play. I need to bring in Rest in Peace, or I need to bring in 4 Grafdigger's Cage so they can't
do the thing.
And so just being mindful of what kind of deck you're playing is going to impact your numbers as well. Decks that are playing a more compact game may want to play more cards of a given effect. Kind of the opposite end of I'm going to play a million turns with the Jund. We'll get there eventually. Is I'm going to play 6 turns or 5 turns.
And that's like back during Hogak Summer. That was the reason that people were playing ley lines instead of rest in pieces also, because it was so important to have that like on turn one,
Yeah,
because you were dead on turn three. Like you didn't have time to play your rest in peace. As insane as that sounds, you were just dead by the time you stuck your rest in peace.
oh, cool. I'm on the draw. I had this turn 2 answer. Oh, they have 12 power on the board.
Yeah, it didn't matter.
It's like, oh, cool. Like, rest in peace. And they're like, hit you for 12? Hit you for
Yep.
12 again. All right, cool. Next
Good
round.
game. Yep.
So, yeah, just think about the kind of deck you're playing, if you're going to be able to see a bunch of cards or not. And going back to, like, how do you see the matchup going post-board?
Right.
Right. That's the other thing, is you don't sideboard for the deck you played against. You sideboard for the deck they're sideboarding into.
Correct.
So you have to be mindful of, like, what am I going to be playing against? Now, like, level 1, it's just, when you're starting to start this, just sideboard for the deck, that you're going to play against. It's really easy to sideboard against, like, the linear decks. Like, hey, I'm playing against Dredge. They're going to bring in ways to blow up my Graveyard Hate, and I'm going to bring in Graveyard Hate. And we're going to see who draws it.
Yeah, I would. I'd be careful of calling that. I forget what you even called it, but I would say more sideboarding for an archetype instead of for the game one deck. Like I think what you had said was just sideboard for the game one deck. Don't just sideboard for the game one deck. Sideboard for the archetype. But then, yes, I agree with where you're going after this.
But
once you figure that out, you can graduate towards sideboarding for the deck they're gonna be.
Yeah, but learn how to sideboard for the archetype that you're playing against. Yeah, and then learn how to sideboard for the deck that they're going to become. Yeah, I think that's a better way of saying it.
Yeah.
All right, so the next thing was something that I've just been thinking about, and I couldn't remember if we had talked about.
And we might have mentioned it like briefly during our the first learn to play thing that we did, but I don't think we went super in depth. So
yeah, and that was like the timing on instants.
Yeah.
And so when you start playing Magic, right, you just cast spells whenever you have mana, and you don't really read if it's an instant or a sorcery. You're just like, I can do this now.
Right,
and
so
then,
I'm going to do it.
Yeah, and then you graduate to someone has told you should wait to cast instants, right? So then you always just start casting instants at the last possible moment, right? But there's a lot of times you can cast instants, and there's a lot of reasons to cast instants at certain times.
Right.
I just wanted to take a look at like why instants get cast at certain times.
If you were to make a broad stroke and say, what is the reasoning behind me casting an instant at any point, whether it's now, whether it's, the start of my opponent's turn, the end of my opponent's turn, like what are you trying to accomplish with the timing of your instance?
You're trying to do, I think, two things, which is maximize the information that you have,
right,
and minimize the information that your opponent has.
100%. Kind of the sub game of Magic that a lot of people maybe don't pick up on or don't think about is that what you want to do is make the best informed decisions possible. That increases the chances of you making the correct decision, while simultaneously forcing your opponent to make the worst decisions possible with the least amount of information. That increases the chance for them to make a mistake that you can capitalize on.
So, right, you went from casting instants whenever you had enough mana on your turn to do it. Then you went to, I'm going to cast my instant at the last possible minute. But there are reasons to cast your instant, like kind of the big places is on your main phase. Like sometimes it's correct to do that. On your opponent's upkeep. There's like one example or two on your opponent's draw step. And your opponent's like turn, we'll make that like main phase, combat, and main phase. And then on your opponent's end step.
Right.
So there's reasons to do all of these. And so the first one on your opponent's, on your main phase, right? If you're playing against a control deck and they have tapped low for whatever reason, and
Sometimes you just need to stick your spell.
yeah, you just need your spell to resolve. Or
Mm-hmm.
if you're playing as a control deck, and let's say you're playing a growth spiral, and you really need to hit your put that to ramp yourself to put that third land into play.
Yeah.
And they played tap land. Just fire off your growth spiral.
Yeah, you're not going to gain anything by waiting.
You're gonna cast it anyway.
Right.
And what are you representing by having that 2 mana up?
Right.
But not a whole lot. But if you growth spiral and they're like mystical dispute it,
Mm-hmm.
well, now you're behind a turn and all this stuff. So, or if
I'll go like half a step further from that and say that on your end step sometimes is a good time to try and stick something also, especially against a control opponent where if they've tapped low or if you go to pass turn, they realize that you haven't done anything for their turn and they're trying to use their mana. Sometimes they'll cast their card draw spell just so they didn't waste their mana. They'll cast their Chemist's Insight or Glimmer of Genius or whatever it is. If I really need an instant to resolve, sometimes I'll jam it there too, in response to your Chemist's Insight growth spiral.
Yeah. So if you're trying to force it through, or either force it through so it doesn't get countered, or you're playing against a deck that uses protection spells. So I guess Infect is one, or
the feather decks.
The feather decks, right, where they have tapped out, and now this is your chance to cast your instant speed removal spell because they can't do anything.
Yep.
Right. So that's one spot where casting it on your turn is when this is a point where you can get it through. I have to kill this creature or I die. Yep. This is my spot. Yeah.
Yep.
So then there's also doing things on your opponent's upkeep when things haven't changed. So looking at you're playing against control, I found myself thinking about this most against control decks than I do against other kind of decks, but it also tracks as well, where you're like, okay, they had 4 mana open. You pass the turn, they don't do anything, and now it's their upkeep, and you can now cast your instant to kill a creature or do whatever you're going to do on their upkeep, and now if they have a counter spell or some way to stop that spell from resolving or protect their creature or whatever, right? They have to use their mana for their turn.
Right. They wasted the 4 mana on your turn and you didn't waste your mana on your turn.
Yeah.
This is also important, like if you're trying to bait out a counter spell, like if you have something in hand that really needs to resolve and you have a card that would be nice but isn't essential if it resolves, this is a good opportunity to bait the counterspell also. Yeah. Where you're going to make them use their mana on their turn so that they're not going to have the mana when you untap to, force your thing through.
So the reason you do it on their upkeep is they haven't drawn their card for turn.
Right.
So they are lacking the information of, hey, would I much rather cast this card I'm going to draw or fight over this thing? So you've cut them off of that information. Now, if they decide to counter their spell or use their mana in some way to respond to your instant, now if they draw a really good card, they might not be able to cast it that turn because they used their mana in that situation.
It's also relevant, like in Modern against blue-white, where the deck has access to Cryptic Command. You really don't want to get blown out by a Cryptic. So sometimes, even if they've been representing a counterspell, sometimes it's better to make them use their mana before they get another chance to find the Cryptic. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Or, you do it on their turn so they can counter draw and maybe not tap your team and counter.
Right.
And then kind of the super edge case that's not been an edge case for the last year is casting instants in your opponent's draw step. So the spells that are best to cast here, the ones that come up most in standard are you play Teferi and you uptick, so now you can cast sorceries as instants. Yeah. Now you can play a hand disruption spell
Thought
in their draw
erasure.
step. You can thought erasure someone in their draw step. So the reason you want to do it here, as opposed to in their upkeep or on your turn, is they've drawn an extra card. So now you have maximum information of what to take.
Also, sometimes they didn't have any cards in their hand and they drew for turn. And during their draw step, they have one card in hand.
Yeah, and you get to just take it.
Yep.
Now, they can, if it's an instant, they can cast it. But if it's not, you definitely get to get that card, or at least know what it is.
Right.
So, waiting till their upkeep, if you have an instant speed discard spell, waiting till their draw step, if you have an instant speed discard spell, is again going to give you maximum information. The other place you see this a lot is like Modern into a lesser extent Legacy with Vendilion Click, right?
Or Call Against Command.
Call Against Command. They draw their card, then you flash and Vendilion Click, and if you choose them, you get to look at their hand and have them put a card on the bottom and draw a new card. So now you get to see all the cards that they could possibly have and figure out which one is best to get rid of in that one specific spot. If you did it in their upkeep or on your turn, you have less information. You're seeing one less card.
Yep.
Right? And then you already brought up the other, like on their turn or on their end of turn, other than, it's an instant, you can cast it on their turn, is to tap them low. So if you do need something to resolve, or
you can kind of force it through.
You can force it through. Or they've tapped low, and now you know your spell is going to resolve on their turn, and then you get to untap and use your mana.
Yeah.
Right. So giving yourself the chance to kind of either bait out a counterspell like you said, or bait out the mana in some other way to then make sure that what you're going to do next is going to resolve. So that's just ways to cast instants.
Yeah, so, and like you said, it applies for things that aren't just control decks also, like against Infect. You don't want to try and kill their creature either before or during combat on their turn, or you could just die. Normally, when you want to fight over a creature, it's in their second main phase, on their end step, on your turn, when like they can't use their pump/protection spell to also pump their creature and kill you.
Yeah,
you want them to kind of waste it.
You'd rather than take one and then in their second main phase make them use their blossoming defense to save their guy.
Yeah.
Than to try to kill it during combat and then have their blossoming defense save their guy and deal you 2 more damage.
Right.
It's contextual, but like these are some of the kind of the big points as to why you do this. Is like maximizing use of your mana, crimping the use of their mana, and things like that. So,
one more thing that I think we might be able to kind of tag on the end of this timing discussion, even though it's not strictly related to like casting instants or things with flash or whatever, is like it's kind of a corner case, but making your opponent use their mana or like float mana and then changing the phase.
Yeah.
Like it's another thing that's kind of in the same vein. Like if you have, I don't even know what a good example is.
Let's say like Field of the Dead. If you Field of the Dead someone, they get a land. You'd much rather Field of the Dead, and that land's untapped. You'd much rather Field of the Dead them someplace where they can't use that mana effectively.
Right.
So that's one thing. Or like let's say they have like an elf, right? And it's your turn, and you're like,
or a noble.
Yeah,
noble hierarch's probably a better example.
Or shock or lightning bolt your noble, and they're like, okay, I'm gonna float a green mana, and you're like, cool, go to combat. Now they have to use that mana or lose it, so you can force their hand on using their mana. Or I guess another instant on your turn thing is if say they have a mana creature. Right, you're like, well, I just want to kill that mana creature now.
Oh, yeah, so that way, so they can't use that mana on their turn.
Yeah, so they're like, they go like turn 2 Incubation Druid, and you're like, all right, well, I can shock it on my turn. That way, they can't use the mana.
Yeah,
right, they can't use the mana to do anything, and so I keep them behind. Whereas you wait till their turn, like even on their upkeep, they could be like opt or
anything that uses that mana. Yeah.
Shock, whatever. They could use that mana somehow. Here you're cutting them off of that one mana and making sure that they don't get to use it. So you can kind of dictate when they get to use their mana by when you use your instance and use your mana.
Yep, it's another resource that you get to play with.
Yeah. I don't know why this like came into my head as a thing I wanted to talk about, but I was like, I don't know if we've talked about this.
Yeah, I think we've touched on parts of it before, but I don't think we really put it all in one place before. So it's a good topic.
There we go. We have leveled the battlefield.
Bam!
Gotta get that branding in there.
Yeah, we haven't done that in a while.
Yeah.
If there's anything else that you guys want to hear more about, like strategy-wise or questions that you have, like that's kind of what we started the show for. And I know lately we've kind of come off of some of that, but like that's really what we enjoy talking about. It's like the strategy stuff behind it all. So if there's any questions you guys have, want us to talk about on the show, or want us just to shoot you a message about, please get a hold of us. That's, like I said, that's kind of why we started doing this. There was a lot of people at our local game store asking us a whole bunch of questions about specifically this kind of stuff. And instead of, explaining it 100 times to a million different people, we figured we'd just put all our thoughts in one place.
Yeah. And I mean, we are both teachers on some level, so.
On some level, sure. You're a little more trained than I am, but sure. I'll take it where I can get it.
Yeah, they don't train us. They're like, you got your PhD? Cool, you can teach now. I'm like, I've never taken a class on how to teach. They're like, you'll figure it out. It's like, oh, cool, sounds good. But
yep,
yeah,
good
like
luck.
this is something that, we wanted to do and we enjoy. So if there's things you want us to kind of like teach you about, we can do that for sure.
Absolutely. I love talking about this kind of stuff anyway, the nuts and bolts of the game.
Yeah. So we have one last thing, and it's Arena. And Arena is really having to carry the load for both
all of Magic,
casual and competitive Magic right now.
Yeah.
It's not quite ready for prime time to do that, but it's what we're asking it to do. With social
we've
distancing.
had some news.
Yeah, we've
had some news over the last week or so.
Yeah.
And like you said, with social distancing, Channel Fireball announced that they are holding online Magic Fests.
Yeah.
I didn't go through and read like the whole article because I had other things to do. I really haven't had a chance to peruse the article, but you did, right?
Very little. From what I gathered, it seems like they're going to be doing this through Discord.
Okay.
Where
that's interesting.
Where they're going to be doing like basically your pairings through Discord, and then you have to like do direct challenges. Because Dennis, I forget what his name is. Dennis something. He does the Scry Me a River podcast with Riley Knight. He like put out a video about how to set up Discord and do direct challenges. So they're running like basically online Magic Fest with like cash payouts and PT invites for them.
Wow.
Yeah, like big money.
These are arena? Like they're only arena?
They're only arena. So they've done that. There's been a lot of other groups starting like trying to do tournaments on arena.
Yeah. Did you get a chance to look at that link that I sent you?
No, I did not.
I don't remember what the name of the site was. I'll look it up and I'll blast it out on Facebook after the show. But there's a website that I guess has been like trying to gain some traction over however long they've been around. But recently with, what's going on in the world, they've kind of ramped their game up. But they're basically the same general idea, but it's a site where you can run a tournament through Arena. You put everybody's name in, you get all their the really long names so that you can direct challenge people. And it is tournament software that anybody can use where I believe you can, like, as long as the tournament, it's like matchmaking almost, where as long as there's a tournament with openings, you can, like, if it's, public and not like a private tournament, you can like jump into a tournament and it'll pair you, you direct challenge, you report results, yada, yada, yada. Same kind of thing, but it's like on a little bit broader scale.
Gotcha.
I don't know if there's, I'm assuming there's not, an entry fee or cash payouts for those, but another way you can play some tournament Magic without having to let people sneeze on you.
Yeah, we've all sat across from someone and had someone like sneeze, and like your
Yeah.
mouth's been open, or
Yeah.
like or your opponent like takes a deep breath of like, and it's just
Yeah.
like in your face, and you're like, oh, I know what you ate for breakfast and lunch. Oh, this is so bad.
I can see some of it.
Yeah, it's like this is awful. What have you done?
Yeah.
But they're trying. This is one of those where you just like coyly or slyly say like, "Hey, wouldn't it be cool if Arena natively did this?"
Hey man, we can't have everything.
So the CFB is doing like basically you're doing daily qualifiers. If you go 5-1 and you advance, this is just reading like the big glittery part of the tweet, and they have a weekly championship that has $25,000 in prizes.
Wow.
And 8 PT invites.
All right.
And then there is a season finals that is $50,000 in prizes, 32 PT invites, and 2 PTF invites, which I don't know what a PT Pro Tour finals.
Yeah, Players Tour finals.
Yeah. So they are trying to make something happen.
Yeah.
So I guess so CFB events doesn't go out of business.
Yeah, I mean whatever you can do, right?
Yeah, I'm trying to look for the entry fee is $25.
Yeah, I thought I had seen that.
Yeah. So but yeah, so they're trying desperately to kind of keep competitive Magic going. But it would be much nicer if they could just like,
Do this on Arena.
yeah, just open a thing and like, being like Wizards official partner, just be like, hey, this costs this many gems.
Yeah.
And then just, Wizards like pays them out their gems.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Or Wizards be able to do something like this. Just be like, hey, we're going to run a giant tournament and give you a PT invite.
Mm-hmm.
And anyone can enter it, but you have to... I mean, they could, right? I mean, they do it with the Mythic qualifiers.
Yeah, the qualifying weekends.
Yeah, like, couldn't they just open it up to, however many people...
Anybody that... Yeah, anyone that wanted to drop down 30,000 gems or whatever.
Yeah, you pay 3,000 gems or whatever it is, and then 30,000. Is that like $300?
I have no idea.
That's
I haven't bought gems in so long.
Okay. But here, you pay $30, and then, we play however many rounds or whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or to a certain record. We're like, hey, you have to go 14-1.
Mm-hmm.
And you get a PT invite or something, or like stratify it. Like, below this many players, it's this big, or what. They should be able to do something like that.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm kind of surprised they haven't. Like, they did do a lot of things. They opened up Brawl for everybody.
That's all I've been playing. I've become a dirty casual. I'm just like,
right.
I don't want to have to like.
Sometimes you just got to turn your brain off.
I don't want to like try to climb the ladder. I'm just gonna play Chu Lane, and if my opponent casts a sweeper, I'm gonna concede. If my opponent
not lose anything.
If my opponent is playing Teferi, I'm just gonna concede. So like, nope. I know what your deck is. Like,
thank you.
It is a dark place when people are like, I want to just cast counter spells, and they're casting like, didn't say please. Like, you're just like, no, this is not okay.
But you didn't say please.
Yeah, when your deck building is you just go to the little thing and you type in counter, and you select blue and then counter, and you just put every card that says counter target spell on it in your deck. You're like, well, I got my deck now. I'm all done. No, thank you.
Sweet.
But, they did open up that, and they did bring back Theros Beyond Death as the ranked draft format sooner than it was supposed to. So they were trying to, give people something to do for a little bit while they were, well, we've all been trapped.
Yeah. Well, some of us are forced to go out in the insanity that is the real world.
Fair. I don't visit there. My outside time is I walk on my driveway for a few minutes.
Just your driveway?
Just my driveway. And then
Not even around the neighborhood?
no. Tomorrow though I have to go out and get supplies.
Okay.
Tomorrow's my one store trip.
Yeah, you got gloves and a mask and
I'm not going to go that far, but I'm going to make sure I stay away from people.
well, my wife and I went to Costco last week and we gloved up. We didn't wear masks, but we definitely gloved up.
There you go. Maybe I should do that. Yep. Maybe I should take the fun videos I send to my students of me in goggles and a face mask and purple latex gloves and just walk out in the environment like that. Like, hey nerds, you're not getting me today.
I don't remember what you looked like. Were you wearing one of them Tyvek suits?
I don't have one of those. I did not buy one of those at Home Depot before the end times. So I don't think I have access to one now.
Well, I didn't know if you had one for lab supplies or not.
No. We did buy. I wanted to. I want to sand. I got to sand something in my garage. It's a lot of drywall, and I'm like, okay, I should have a mask because my wife's gonna yell at me if I don't have a mask. Fine.
Yeah.
So I went like 3 weeks ago to buy a mask. I was gonna buy like a mask. Mm-hmm. They only had boxes of 40 or something.
Holy
and I was
moly.
like, fine. I was like, this is dumb. And Hannah was like, can you please buy it just in case
dumb now.
Just in case we run out at work. And so today she took the masks with her to the doctor's office she works at, so they would have masks.
Crazy.
I was like, oh, I don't feel so bad. I was like, we'll get this just in case. And so it is now gone. So in addition to trying to run Magic Fest online and bringing back different things, Wizards also tried to do like a digital F&M.
Yeah, I don't know exactly how this worked. Our store is not participating in this for whatever reason. And I didn't read the whole like release thing that WPN sent out. But I believe that stores are issued like arena codes that are good for something in the game. I thought I saw a mention of sleeves and packs, but I don't remember like what exactly the arena codes were for. But you could like sign up for an F&M through your local game store, and then depending on placement, yada yada yada, they would issue you an arena code for something you could redeem in game, which is kind of a neat way for LGSs to stay engaged with their customers.
Yeah, it was something like each week it changed like the format that was being played or something.
Yeah, I think so.
So like you would go play a specific format on Arena, you'd get some result, and then you would get this code from your LGS. Mm-hmm. So if you have an LGS, like if it's something that you think you and your friends would be interested in, you should reach out to them. We tried to
absolutely
gauge interest to kind of run our own tournament for our local game store. We had one person that was like...
there were 2 people.
2 people? Okay, 2 people.
Yeah. And that was actually like hours before Wizards released this thing. So it ended up not mattering. But nobody wanted to play our Arena F&M.
Yeah, but maybe if you have 8 people that are really jonesing to play, this could be a way to do something with your LGS and, not have to hang out with people.
Do you follow Cape Fear on like your personal Facebook, Twitter, whatever?
I do see stuff from them pop up all the time.
Did you see the last thing that they posted?
No, I did not.
Okay. I also thought this was kind of a neat idea. Some of the issues that LGSs have with running an Arena F&M are that they feel like Wizards is pushing their paper customers to digital, and that they aren't super keen on supporting that, which is understandable. I mean, you don't want to, actively push your players somewhere else. So Cape Fear, a local game store roundabouts an hour from us that we've, gone to some events for. Super nice store. They also run a huge online presence, so you should check them out as well. They put out I think it was a Facebook post a couple days ago kind of taking this WPN, arena, FNM, whatever, like to the next level. And they said, okay, we're not going to do the arena thing, but we will run a digital FNM. So what they were proposing was everybody signs into their Discord server with webcams and a playmat. And you could do pairings like on the Discord server through like video chat almost, where you had your game board and your opponents is on your computer screen and you can play a game like that. So you're getting to play paper Magic and you're getting to use your cards that you paid good money for, but aren't necessarily being pushed to arena. And I think there's definitely some some challenges there, but it was a kind of a neat idea.
Yeah, I saw a tweet or Facebook post of like talking about people taping their phone face down to a box and then playing underneath the box so they could see the battlefield. So they could stream that to someone else.
Yeah.
So that person could see their battlefield and they could see each other's battlefield and play paper Magic.
That's kind of been a thing for a while. A lot of, I guess it's popular with judges that make a lot of friends through the judging circuit, but aren't necessarily geographically close to them. And Commander's really popular with judges. I guess they wanted a way to, play a game of Commander with, specific people when, those people might live all over the country. So they had actually started doing things like this over Discord, where you could, digitally have, a 4-way video call where everybody's battlefield was being represented and you could kind of see what was going on. I don't know the logistics of it or anything, but I know people have been doing it for a while.
Yeah. I mean, we've got to come up with new or make more mainstream old ways to play Magic in non-traditional ways.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we did not have a lot of data. I will try to push it out a little bit harder, but there might be a lot of people that are like me that are like, you know what? My life is stressful enough.
I don't need to be grinding the ladder.
I don't want to grind the ladder. That's where I'm at. I'm like, you know what I don't want to do? As soon as I get into a match and I'm like, I'm not having fun, I'm like, I'm out. I'm done. I don't want to do this anymore. Oh, I did have one data-y-ish kind of thing.
Okay.
So yesterday, I hit level 90.
Okay.
In the mastery
Congratulations.
Pass. Thank you. That's all I want to do. I just want to brag on that. So I waited until that point to redeem the Mastery Pass because I wanted to see how much the Mastery Pass cost.
And how much you get back?
Yeah, so the Mastery Pass is 3,400 gems. And so I did that, and then I opened all the packs I got. So it's 16 packs plus all the mythics and rares and stuff that you got as rewards. So for me, the Mastery Pass only cost me 1,020 gems.
Okay.
So by the time you got all the gems you got back for just doing the Mastery Pass, and then all of the card rewards for, you have, this is your 5th copy of this.
Yeah.
So your mileage will vary a little bit. It depends on how big your collection is.
Right.
But it only cost me around 1,000. I think that realistically it might end up costing someone 1,500 if they don't have a complete set of everything. Because and then I got 4,000 gold as well. So it probably comes out to close to a wash once you have a lot of the cards from all the sets.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to put that out there because I know that just how much does it end up like costing. And so it's about 1,000 gems. So that's not too bad.
Yeah, that's not bad. So if you're discounting all of the, booster packs and card rewards and all that, what else do you get for your 1,000 gems? You get a pet. And a bunch of mastery orbs, right?
You get a pet, a bunch of mastery orbs, like 25 mastery orbs, I think.
Okay.
So you can finish off all the fancy cards from that set. But it's not even it's just an upgrade for your pet. You don't get a different pet. They almost got me. They brought out the Jace puppet as a pet.
Oh yeah.
And I was like, oh man, I want the Jace puppet. I was like, no,
Jace puppet's sweet.
like don't spend money on the Jace puppet. It'll end up in the bargain bin one day, and then I'll pounce.
Yeah.
He'll end at 50% off, and I'll be like, all right, Jace puppet, it's your time to shine. Yeah, I don't know what else there is other than the 4,000 gold.
Yeah, I think it's the pet upgrade. You get like a set of sleeves, like a different set of sleeves.
Yeah.
And then your mastery orbs.
Yeah, it's not.
I guess I don't know if you get anything else.
Yeah. But if you think about it as, if it's 1,500 gold, 1,500 gems for, it ended up being like 16 packs and like probably 10 or 15 rares and mythics.
Yeah.
Like, that's not too bad of a deal.
Oh, you get wild cards too, right?
Do you? I might have got some wild cards.
Yeah, I think you get wild cards from that too. So yeah, I mean, it comes out as a pretty good deal, I think.
Yeah, but just wanted to like give you guys like a number. So if you have a lot of the cards, it's going to be around 1,000, a little bit more. So that's a lot less painful than 3,400.
Yeah, good data point.
So I think that is the show.
Yeah, I think that'll do it for this week. If you have any show ideas, please let us know. We're always keeping a lookout for what you guys want to hear about. Remember, if anybody's interested in hearing more about this, financial series that I think might be kind of interesting to keep track of over the next few weeks, few months, whatever, let us know. Because, like I said, if nobody's interested but me, there's not a whole lot of point in me putting a whole bunch of effort into it.
Yeah.
So let us know about that. You can hit us up on Twitter
at Casual Tripod. I will say that Twitter has been a little slow as of late for the Magic stuff.
Yeah.
So that's why there hasn't been as much like me sending out decks and stuff. I did see some unusual stuff in the last few days, but it has been pretty slow.
Yeah, and there's a lot of other things on people's minds right now. You can find us on Facebook at Casual Tryhard MTG. If you want to drop us an email, that's show@casualtryhardmtg.com. Hit us up on Patreon at patreon.com/casualtryhardmtg. Don't forget about our TCG affiliate link. If you're looking to pick anything up from there, it's tcg.casualtryhardmtg.com. Don't forget to support your local game store during these times. They cannot make it through this without you. I promise they cannot make it through without you. So make sure you're taking care of them. Take care of each other. Make sure you're keeping clean and healthy.
Yeah.
You got anything else?
No, I think we're going to catch you on the interwebs.
We will catch you on the interwebs.